Happy Sunday. This is SacredPera RK, and I am here with you live on this impromptu live. I hope that you guys are having an awesome day. As you guys may know, it's been quite a while since I have been on here doing a live. And I did miss you guys. I had gotten some DMs asking me, when are you going to do another live? And today's that day. So here I am. Thank you so much, Lori Lee, Barbie, for joining. Hope you guys are having a good Sunday. Happy Sunday to you. So I'm here today. Hi, Coach Play. That's my husband, Coach Play, spelled with an I and not a Y, an I. And as many of you guys know, he's a fitness instructor, a personal trainer, and nutritionist, and he works at our local gym here, and he also takes clients. So any questions that you may have about nutrition, fitness, anything of that nature, definitely give him a contact through Instagram or Facebook. Hello to you. Thank you so much for joining. So guys, I am here with you guys to talk about story analysis. As you guys know, I love play. I love talking about adult play therapy. I love being able to talk to you guys about storylines. That's one of the huge inspirations for having this live. Hi, Life in Doldom. That's my soul sister. How are you doing, sis? Thank you for joining. You guys can always check out Life in Doldom's page. She has amazing content, and right now she is in the midst of a storyline in which there is a serial killer. So we're trying to find out who it is and what's going to happen. Hello, beautiful to you too. So guys, we're talking about story analysis, and we are talking about this from the perspective of a movie review. And the movie is Saturday Night Fever. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with it, but I love me some Saturday Night Fever. I love Staying Alive. I'm a huge Bee Gees fan. I believe my husband got me the Bee Gees Ultimate album with all the collections and stuff during one of my birthdays. I love Bee Gees. That's just my stuff right there. I know for sure that we were at one of our lives, one of our past lives, my husband and I were on the disco floor dancing to Bee Gees. Love me some Bee Gees. So Saturday Night Fever for me is just an incredible movie. When we talk about it from storyline, we talk about it from character-wise, we get even more into this in-depth, provocative style of writing. And that's really what I want to come from. I want to talk about the main character, Tony Manero. So if you guys have already seen Saturday Night Fever, just think about different things, different scenes and clips in your mind. If you haven't, then now maybe it's time to give it a rewatch. I watched it over again probably about 3 days ago. My husband and I did, and then that's where I took all these notes. Now, of course, I'm not going to go through all these notes with you because it's a lot of notes. As you can tell, I was very excited, right? Back in front pages. But I really, really like it because many of us have characters and storylines through our dolls on this particular platform and in our doll community. If in fact you may not have a storyline with your dolls, you may follow a page or an account that has a storyline, and of course has characters and has plot and climax of their story, and then everything kind of just evens out. It plateaus. So you follow a storyline account that has a storyline, or you may in fact be a storyline writer. And so this is for you, or you may just like movies like I do. So Saturday Night Fever, starring John Travolta as Tony Manero. I want to really dig into Tony's character. I currently have a storyline in which I have a character named Reggie, and he's a turd, right? And I get certain comments about him in my comments section about how horrible he is, how despicable he is. And I love it. I love it because for me, it's like I'm really showcasing this character and his all natural beauty of him being this jerk, an a-hole, right? But then in the same hand, to a certain degree, it's like he doesn't even realize that he's that way. And I'm really looking forward to digging more into his family lifestyle. Reggie's not going anywhere, guys. Like, he's going to stay. He's staying. At one point in time, I thought about, maybe like phasing him out. And then my husband was like, no, he kind of reminds me of this one character, Tony, from another soap opera. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I can kind of see that. And then there's like another character from another soap opera that to this day, I think that he's still on that soap opera because he was such a pivotal character, right? Like he really helps move the storyline forward, even with his horrible actions. So I want to talk about Tony. I'm not going to take too much of your time, but this was really just strong on my mind and on my heart to be able to share with you guys. We see Tony, and he's a likable character in that he had certain charming ways, and he's the main character. So we almost feel an inclination to like him because we see him the most on the screen, and the story is revolving around Tony Manero. On the same hand, he's definitely a turd. He's a womanizer. He's extremely direct and blunt. He's abusive. He's aggressive. If he wants something, he gets it. He's not in touch with his emotions. And we see someone who is really struggling to find an identity for himself, struggling to get out of the bondage of the label that has been created for him as far as who he was as an individual, who he was in his family. He was kind of the black sheep of the family. And then you also see him battling, trying to get away from the stereotypes of being Italian, and feeling that by projecting racism towards other races, that it made him better. So you have there's so many competing themes and topics in Saturday Night Fever. And you definitely had the topic of, am I good enough? And then in the same hand, I'm better than. And so you have this, I'm better than you, I'm better than this race, but then in the same hand, am I good enough? I'm better than what my family thinks of me, but in the same hand, am I good enough? And so you see this competing theme throughout the entirety of the movie. And really, you see that in each and every one of the characters. And if we just talk about characters just a little bit and segue off of Tony, what we find is that no matter who the character was, even if they were considered a minor character, they still had such depth. There really wasn't any true minor characters in that movie. Each one of those characters carried weight. Each one of those characters were layered, and there was so much to them. Now, of course, they didn't have as many layers as Tony, because Tony's, again, the main character. He's our protagonist, and in many ways also an antagonist. You either love him or like him, or you're just kind of like, I don't really know how I feel about him. I felt that he was very well written, because we see flaws and faults. He wasn't made to be this dreamy-eyed character. He was made to be someone who had a dream and who was trying to figure out, how do I make this real? Is this a real kind of dream? I want to be a dancer, but it's not really realistic from the community that I come from. In the same hand, I don't want to just keep being in this hardware paint shop either. I want to be something greater. I want to be someone. You have a character in that story named Stephanie, and it was really important to her to be someone. And you see that same theme in the character of Tony. He wanted to be someone, but he didn't know who, and he didn't know how to get there, but he didn't want to keep on being the product of the environment that he came from. So I really enjoyed that they made someone who had so many different dynamics to him, who was extremely layered, who had faults and flaws. And I wanted to bring that to the forefront of our conversation together, because I feel that so often when we're writing a character, and especially when we deal with writing a character through our dolls and on social media, it's really easy to want to make these gingerbread characters or cookie characters and very nice, happy characters. And I have nothing against that. I've said in previous lives before, we need all of those characters. We need the happy, sunny characters who every day is sunshine for them and they're joyful. And I love it. I question sometimes whenever we have storylines where characters are going through circumstances and issues, and we just kind of, just give surface. We don't really want to go in deep. And we don't want to go in deep because, one, we don't want to have to deal with IG bots. I get it. And then sometimes we don't want to go in too deep because we're concerned that our audience is going to feel different about us as writers and feel different about us with the story that we give. But I want to challenge you today. I want to challenge you that in your writing, be it with your dolls or in your personal writing, if you are in fact a writer outside of Instagram, I want to challenge you to write your characters in true nature. Write them with their flaws, their hangups, their faults, their nastiness, their awkwardness. I tell you, Saturday Night Fever, it never sugarcoated a character. Tony, like I said, was a very, very faulty character. He had a lot of issues, guys. The girl that wanted to get with him, Gina, I think that was her name. I can't think of her name right now. But she wanted to be with him, and he told her up front, like, I don't want to be with you. I don't want to be with you. I don't like you. She's like, I want to make it with you. He was like, I don't. And that was a 70s term. And you got to go look it up to find out exactly what make it with you is. But nonetheless, she was like, I want to be with you. And he was like, I don't want to. And he was very direct about it. He was very blunt about it. Later on, did he try? Yeah. But then he was like, I'm not feeling you. He was not the best character. And in the same hand, she wasn't. She was extremely, she had an extremely low self-esteem. She was very vulnerable. She was also obsessive, like stalking obsessive. And they didn't sugarcoat that. That was who she was. You had another character who just had my heart. Hi, lie_doll. Thank you for joining. You had another character that, Bob, I do believe, Bobby. He had got a young girl pregnant, and we're dealing with religion. That was also a huge theme throughout this whole movie. Religion was such a huge thing between Tony's parents and the way that they felt about religion, between the brother Frank being a priest and then no longer being a priest, leaving from the priesthood, and the shame that was brought upon him, and the shame that the parents felt from that. You have a young boy, Bobby, who gets his Catholic girlfriend pregnant, and now he's trying to figure out, like, what do I do? And he's talking to everybody, and no one's really listening. No one's giving him any sound advice, and he just felt completely lost. And I love this line. I have two things that I always have a little bit more, right? And her name was Annette, not Gina. Her name was Annette. Her name was Annette. I found it in my notes. But I do have two things right here. There was a comment that he said, that Tony says, about Bobby. So when they were on the bridge, and your girl Annette has totally screwed up, and it wasn't just her fault. Now, granted, she went about things the wrong way, and that Tony has told her, like, hey, don't come with us. The other two guys, Double J, now they want to, like, hey, let her come, and then proceed to do horrible things to her, right? And then when they get to the bridge, she's like, she's ready to throw it all away because, something very bad has just taken place. I'm trying my best to say this in an appropriate way for this time that we now live in, this era that we live in. Definitely check out the movie if you haven't, so that you'll know what I'm talking about. If you have seen it, then you know what I'm talking about. So she's on the bridge. She's ready to throw it all away. And just so happens to be that Bobby is having a breakdown. Like you have her who's having a breakdown, and then Bobby who's at his wits, and he has a breakdown. And he's kind of playing around on this bridge. Well, not like playing in the way that we do with our dolls and just adult play therapy, but he's just really at a wit's end and doing some very risky stuff on the bridge. And granted, other people have, but in the same hand, they have kind of like considered Bobby to be more soft and not to do stuff like that. And Bobby's like, Tony, where were you? Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you talk to me? And when Tony's like, get off the bridge, and he tries to reach out for him, that's when he does this turn from him and he slips off and he goes into the depths of the water. Okay. And so, that unfortunately was the finale of that character, right? So when the police come and they're talking to Tony and the rest of the group, there's this statement that Tony says. He's like, there's ways of killing yourself without killing yourself. And I'm really hoping that it's okay for me to say that on here. I know that we're in a different censorship of time. But I bring up this quote because it was as if he was looking at them as a group and as a whole and seeing that they were really doing damage to themselves slowly. And he realized through what happened to Bobby that the life that he was leading was just what Stephanie had said, that he was going nowhere. He didn't have any future. And that was a huge theme in this movie too. Future. What's your purpose? What's your future? This is just such a great young adult movie. And, just a movie of its time and before its time. But nonetheless, she was like, you don't have a future. You're not going anywhere. You're just a cliche. And it really did hurt him. But I believe right then is when he realized, like, we're just slowly damaging ourselves. Like, we're slowly dying in what we're doing and how we're doing it. And he didn't want to be a part of that system anymore. And that's when you see him go to Stephanie towards the end of the movie, or basically the end of the movie, saying that he didn't want to go back into that life. He wanted to do what she was doing and be someone else. And once again, that theme of being someone else comes up. So I think that right there is so important, because we see the turn of the character take place, not in the beginning of the movie, not in the middle of the movie, but literally minutes before the end of the movie is when we see this character. We see him evolving. We see Tony evolving throughout the movie. But it took something so impactful as the death of his friend Bobby, and feeling the guilt and the weight of his friend dying, and knowing, like, I didn't reach out enough, and I didn't know how to reach out, and I didn't know how to process his emotions, and I didn't know how to identify with him, because I didn't know how to identify with me. But it took that for him to say, I gotta grow up. I need to mature. I gotta do some things different. He had to apologize to Stephanie. We're looking at somebody who probably apologies was not really an easy thing to do, because he felt like what he did was okay. And he had to realize, I just want to have a friendship with you. I need to grow up. I need to make some changes. I don't know how I can be your friend, because I don't know how to be a friend to a girl, and I'm a boy. That was where he was at with things. He's like, I don't know how to do this, because Stephanie was like, you sure you can really be a friend to a girl? And he was like, I don't know, but I'm willing to try. So he was willing to try something new and different, and to become someone outside of the environment that he was raised in. Because the environment he was raised in, his father was very aggressive. He was abusive to the mother. The mother was aggressive with him. He was also had some womanizing ways as well, because there was a Farrah Fawcett. We're talking about the 70s. Like I said, this was back in the day. Farrah Fawcett poster, very, very famous pose of her in her swimsuit, a red swimsuit, and he's staring, like, ogling at her chest in the poster, which lets you know he did not have any respect for his wife. He disrespects his wife by talking about her spaghetti and about her as a woman and a wife. And this was normal. Then he was disrespectful to his son about the raise that he got. And his son was like, I only got 2 things that I have that makes me feel proud, that gives back to me joy. And he's like, work, being able to dance and getting this raise. That's it. And he's like, I knew you were going to poop on it. And his dad's like, $4 doesn't even buy $3. But what I got from that, since being an adult now and living life, is maybe the dad was unhappy because life was happening so fast for him. And he didn't get a chance to live in his passions and do the things that he wanted to do. He had to do the things that he had to do. These are things that he had to do for his family. And now he was unemployed. And for a lot of times, especially in that era, not only do you have, of course, like the scriptural base of like a man who doesn't work doesn't eat, but then in the same hand, you also had a man that was a man when he worked. Men were associated to manhood through work. And in many instances, it's still now, because when you talk to women, or we're on this platform and we're listening to different views that women have, sometimes it's majority, he has to have this kind of job. He has to be able to bring home this. He has to do this. He has to do this. And so work is still very much connected to manhood. And no matter how much we try to say that times are different, I believe in many cases it's still the same. And so he felt less of a man. And what you saw was a lot of aggression, a lot of depression that was expressed through anger. And so this was the environment that Tony was coming from. But I do want to make a note in that when we build our characters, that we consider these elements, that we don't just have an angry and aggressive character, but also consider the roots of it. We're looking at the times, like I said, of the 70s, where you have a dad who was probably born, what, in the 40s or 50s, and he is unhappy because life is not like it, like he wanted it to be. You have someone that during that time, it was honestly okay to look at other women. Nowadays, we really do promote monogamy, and we really do promote, your eyes should only be on me, my eyes are only on you, right? But during that time, that wasn't really the case. I remember even having a conversation with someone that was older in my family, and we were talking about sexual harassment, and he was like, I never thought I would see a day where you couldn't say baby to another woman at work. He was like, we used to do that all the time. We used to say baby, honey, you tap her on the butt. It wasn't a real big deal. He's like, now you do those things. It's sexual harassment. And he was genuinely surprised. And I was like, yeah, that is, but even back then that was still disrespectful, right? But because of the time and the era, it was acceptable. It was truly acceptable. So you want to be able to consider what is acceptable to your character because of the time and era that they derive from compared to even now. And I love that there wasn't any sugarcoating in this. It was just straight up, these are human characters with their complexities, with their flaws, with their genuineness. Tony was also a very genuine character, a very authentic character. He was extremely blunt, like I said before. He was blunt with Annette. He was blunt with his friends. Even the girl that he was trying to impress, Stephanie, he still didn't sugarcoat. At first, he tried to be understanding. He was like, yeah. When they were doing coffee together, he was trying to be nice. And then he just got tired of it. And he was like, you're full of poop. And he was like, if you're not full of poop, then you're giving off BS. And she took it like a champ and came right back at him. And that was their form of respect for each other. So I loved that it was just this genuine, direct dialogue that was very true to the times and very true to the nature of the characters. And that's really what we want to talk about right now, is be true to the nature of your characters. When you're writing your storyline, it's honestly a beautiful thing to have multiple themes and topics as long as it fits together. Like I said, we were looking at where religion was extremely a strong topic in this particular film. So much so that even at the end of the film, when Tony goes to Stephanie, we gather and get a sense of reconciliation and even redemption, which fits with the theme and topic of this being of it having this religious undertone and overtone, right? You get a sense of jealousy. It's brought up from the little sister. She's like, oh, you're so jealous of Frank. And that's like at the very beginning of the film. You see Annette being jealous of Stephanie. You see all these different jealousy perplexities come up with the friends and how they relate to Tony. They really didn't want him to be happy. And they didn't mind BSing him. That was another thing that he got really mad about with that last dance. He was like, the other dancers who were Puerto Rican, they were better dancers than them. And the French was like, no, they weren't. He was like, they couldn't give the trophy to the Puerto Ricans, not, the Club 2001, which is crazy, right? Because we've already passed 2001. But it was like huge in the 70s that you have a club called Club 2001. It's like epic. And that was before the Prince song, like Party Like It's 1999. Okay. All right. So I got a little sidetracked because I just thought that was so awesome that the club was named 2001. But anyways, he was like, this club is like family to us. And so it would be wrong for them to give that trophy to anyone of a different race because they would have been kind of like ostracized, probably shut down. And his friends, instead of them being genuine with him and saying, yeah, they did dance better than you, they were still like, no, you were good. So he realized he didn't want people just to be up in his face saying you did good and it wasn't true. He really wanted some truth. So he went from being in the very beginning of the film where everything was like kind of a facade and he was cool with it being a facade, to now he valued truth. So much so that he gave the prize money and the trophy to the Puerto Rican couple because, and I would say their names, I knew their name, but they never did disclose their name. But he did that in order to show honor to them because he genuinely felt that they danced better to them. Now, why Tony and Stephanie danced to a slow song, I do not know. And I love the song More Than a Woman. It is one of my favorite songs. Anything Bee Gees pretty much I love. I can't even think of a Bee Gees song I don't love. I love Bee Gees song. And I loved it when Aaliyah did it years later, More Than a Woman. I love both versions. I treasure and adore the one by the Bee Gees though. And I really don't think that that was the song that they should have did for a competition. But I love that they did this though, because one, it showed that Tony was like, I want to please Stephanie, and I saw Stephanie on the dance floor with a slower song, and I want to impress her, so we're going to do a slower song. And it showed that, you know, he was getting in touch with, his emotions. So he went from just doing fast, rapid disco music with just anyone to where now he was like, I'm really putting my sights and my targets on this one person that I want to spend my time with and express my emotions with and grow and evolve with. And that was what the music was symbolic of. So sometimes when you're writing your character, they may do something that's out of character. And I have noticed it on storylines, and I've noticed it in comments where people go, well, that's a little bit out of character for them. And it's okay for that character to do things out of character because maybe they're evolving. Maybe they're making changes. And what you'll notice with Tony is that these changes didn't feel right to him. It felt really wrong. Like, I'm changing and I want to accept it, but it's hard to accept. And then he tried to be rough with Stephanie and she was like not having it and she kicked him in his gongas and he was like, oh, and he realized I can't do that with you. And the person I used to be, I don't want to be. So I wanted to share that in that when your character is evolving in your storyline, it's okay to show them have some rough edges with it. That maybe it's kind of difficult for them to make these changes, right? But in the same hand, they're wanting to obtain something different for themselves. And on a last note, I would like to, not actually on a last note. I see a little star on one of these notes that I have. Hi, Mr. Fluffykins. Thank you so much for joining. Check out Mr. Fluffykins' page. Always such enjoyable, funny content where we get to follow Mr. Fluffykins in the house of Donnie and Margot. Check them out. All right, guys. The bridge. There's so much on the bridge. And I have to bring this up. And it'd be like my second to last conclusion. Really, really quick. Talking about the bridge from Saturday Night Fever. That bridge was shown in the very beginning of the film, right? Then we notice that the bridge is used throughout the film when the kids, the young people are goofing off on the bridge and doing risky stuff where they could fall below into the traffic or the water, right? We have the bridge. When he's sitting down with Stephanie after he encounters Stephanie's sugar daddy, and Stephanie's like, she just kind of like had a little bit of a breakdown because now she has to confess that, I didn't know anything. And this guy showed me everything. And yeah, I did mess up and I was sleeping with him. I was married, but in the same hand, where would I be? I'd be a nobody if I didn't meet this guy and do things the way I did. So they go to the bridge, they sit on a bench and just kind of give each other some type of solace, right? He starts talking about the bridge, and he knew all these amazing facts about the bridge. And throughout the film, Tony actually says a lot of really smart stuff. He was way smarter than what he even knew. Like, they were talking about Romeo and Juliet, and he was like, oh yeah, that's by that Shakespeare guy. And she was like, no. And she talks about the director. It's William Shakespeare, no matter who directs it. It's still William Shakespeare. Anyways, he then says, I always wondered, why didn't Romeo just like not drink the poison right then? Why didn't he just do something, to take it a little slower? And she's like, that's how they did it back then. Not understanding that he was saying, like, what if he just would have waited until Juliet woke up? Which also shows that he was there. There was some emotions that was there. He had a romantic side. He just didn't know how to touch it. He just didn't know how to be in touch with it. But let's talk about this bridge, because the bridge has a huge symbolism in the whole film. Bridge symbolizes communication and union. I looked it up. And can be this connection between God and man. Also, it is the passage to reality, or merely a symbol for traveling and crossing. Also symbolizes freedom. And it was the foreshadowing of Tony's next chapter, leaving, couldn't read my writing right there, leaving the comfort of home. Thank you so much for joining. Bridges connect once previously isolated place to another and allow people to come together. We mentioned the concept of building bridges whenever we want to unify places or people that are otherwise separated. For all these reasons, the image of the bridge represents a powerful connection and a symbol of hope. I love it because we see that no matter what Tony went through, there was still this hope of being better, of that tomorrow would be better. We also see that although we had all these different characters, it was like Bobby, Double J, I can't remember the other friend's name. You had Annette, you had Stephanie, you had Tony, you had the parents, you had Frank, you had the little sister who was only in there. Now, she was definitely a minor character. She was in there like just for one dinner. You have the grandma, she was there a little bit. These were like extreme minor characters. But when we look at it, each person was on their own little island. Each person was on their own little island. And it took an awakening and an enlightenment to take place to cause Tony to evolve so that he could connect to someone else. And he could no longer be just this little island, but being able to connect to Stephanie. And it took him losing Bobby to realize he wasn't doing very well at connecting. And then in connecting to Stephanie, he realized that there was another reality, that he could travel beyond that. And that was definitely the foreshadowing for Staying Alive, which was the second film, because he was no longer living in the same place. He had moved so that he could pursue his career as a Broadway dancer. And that's a whole nother film, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But I do want to leave on this very last note, because this is really important to me as far as mental health wise. When we look at Bobby, sometimes we are told, especially on different platforms, social media platforms, and on the TVs and on the commercials, you're told a whole lot about the importance of talking to people. That if you're going through mental health crisis or an issue is bothering you and troubling you, as heavy as it was for Bobby, they're like, talk to people, talk to someone, let someone know, let a family member know, a friend, a religious leader know, let someone know, talk to them and let them know what's troubling you. We see Bobby in this film talk to all of his friends, family members, of course, the girlfriend. He's gone to religious leaders. He's like, I don't know what to do. I'm having this crisis. And the unfortunate thing is that no one was listening. A lot of people ignored him. And I really do believe that it's because they lived on their own island. And as individuals, whenever we are going through troubles, just being completely honest about it, when we're going through troubles and problems, it's very easy for us to feel like our issues are so cosmic and it weighs down on us. And we feel like it's so hard and so heavy. And sometimes it really is. No, this is not at all minimizing what people are going through. I go through my own things as well. And when I'm going through my own things, it feels huge. It feels heavy. It feels weighty. Can't go to sleep. Can't wake up. It's hard, right? It's weighing on you. I get it. But the issue becomes when we don't have a bridge. When we become an island and someone is saying, hey, I need help, and they're reaching out their hand for that help. And we live so much in our own island and in our own bubble that we don't know how to connect to someone emotionally, just to be a listening ear, or just to give some sound advice. Or just to even say, I don't know what to say to help, but I'm here with you. I can listen to you. Anything I can do to let you know that tomorrow's going to be better. Like maybe right now this is hard. And yeah, you know, people's view of you and views of your girlfriend, as far as like with the Bobby character, is it may not be the best, but you guys can get through this. There's been other people that were young parents. You can get through this. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's just letting someone know you can get through this. It seems heavy right now, but I promise you, 5 years from now, 3 years from now, it's not going to be as hard. It looks ugly right now. It's not always going to be like that. But when we live on our own island and we don't know how to connect with people emotionally to build a bridge, it's not sometimes that people aren't talking. It's just that people aren't listening. And it's unfortunate that this character was ignored so much to the point where the accident did take place. And, you know, we lost Bobby in that film. That's very unfortunate. And I believe it's even more unfortunate because this is really what does happen. That sometimes people are crying out and calling out and saying, hey, help me with this. Can you just listen to me? Can you give me some sound advice? And we don't say anything. Kind of just brush them off. And kind of just keep going on with our life. Say, hey, I'll call you. And then we get busy with what's important to us and what feels urgent to us and what our pleasures are. And it was so sad because Bobby was like the most used character. They used him for being a chauffeur. They used him for his vehicle so they could get to places that they wanted to go to. Bobby was used the most out of that whole thing when they went to go beat up the Barracudas, which were a gang who may or may not have beat up Gus. That was another character because Gus later says, I don't know if they did it or not. Nonetheless, they used Bobby's car and had him as the chauffeur, and it made Bobby feel bad for driving off. Although he did come back. So Bobby was the most used character and yet the most unheard character. And so I would like to send out another challenge for us to be more of an open ear for each other. Because I'm more than certain that even if you don't know someone that's a Bobby, you may end up meeting a Bobby. Or you may end up having a friend that's going through a situation like Bobby. Or you may end up being a Bobby at some point. And it's so important that we don't be on our own little islands, but that we be that bridge, that connection. We be the ones to be able to be that listening ear. Because when it really did come down to it, Bobby just needed someone to listen to him. He just needed someone to say, tomorrow's going to be better. You can get through this. And no matter, even if you don't fully believe it, because you can't really see how it's going to be better, but sometimes people just need to hear that word. They just need to hear, it's not so bad. It's not as bad as what it seems. It's going to get better. Be that listening ear. Be that bridge. Be that one that can hear. Now, I'm not saying like let down all your healthy boundaries, listen to everything everyone else is saying, and then you get way down. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. But I'm just saying that not all the time mental health issues is because people are holding it in and they're not letting people in. Sometimes people are talking. Sometimes they're screaming and they're crying. And they're saying what they need, and they're just not being heard. So make sure that we are being attentive to human people in our lives that are going through things, and be that bridge that connects. And let's not be islands for each other. So I thank you guys for being with me today and allow me to take up your time. And I'm so glad to be back doing a live. Hopefully I'll be able to do this again very, very soon. If not, happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Happy belated Halloween. Hope that you guys had an awesome and amazing one. Also, enjoy writing. Enjoy playing. This is just another promotion of us being able to enjoy what we do, which is adult play therapy. Enjoy it in whichever way that you do it. If it's with the violin, if it's with writing, if it's with your dolls, do what you enjoy. And make sure that if it is with writing, that you are staying true to the characters that you produce. And I do want to just put a disclaimer that if you do get comments about certain characters and it's negative, pat yourself on the back. Literally, like when people write me comments about Reggie, I pat myself on the back because I want that character to be authentic. I want that character to be a turd. I want that character to be someone that you just can't stand, but in the same hand, there's something about him that you kind of like, but I want that. So when I get those comments, I'm like, yes, I'm right there. And I know sometimes when we can get certain comments that are negative about our characters, it can hurt. It can hurt when you're like, oh, why would you say that? Why do you feel like that? But let's turn that around as the writers of these storylines. And let's be excited when the true nature of our characters are showing. Not all characters can be flowers and sunshine. You need some characters that have depth, that have dimension, that have issues. And be real with those characters. Because Saturday Night Fever made sure to be real with that, with each one of their characters. So I thank you guys. If you need to check out that movie again, that was Saturday Night Fever. I can't think of the exact year. I know it was in the 1970s. And this is SacredPera's review of the movie Saturday Night Fever. Thank you guys for joining. Hi, Miss T's Doll Room. Thank you for joining. And I hope to see you guys before Thanksgiving. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.